Hi, all of my fantastic friends, and welcome back to another episode of Lilly Code. So, here we discuss all things coding. You can ask me any questions you want, and I'll get back to you and assist you in any way I can. On today's episode, we're going to be discussing the top 10 things that I wish I had have known before I got into programming. And now I'm in the programming industry for 4 years. I work with a huge international Fortune 500 company programming as a front-end developer, and I love my job, you guys. So, I'm after expanding to this level after 4 years, and here are some of the top 10 things I wish I had have known before I embarked on this journey, and things that held me up at the beginning of the journey that I spent too much time thinking about and really should have just been practicing and coding instead of worrying about these 10 things. So let's get straight into it. The first thing that I'd like to bring to your attention is that people often ask, what age should I start coding, or is it too late to become a coder? Have I missed the boat? The answer is no. There is no age that's the wrong age to start coding. I often say to my family members who have young children, those children should be already coding. I feel like it's such a valuable skill in today's world. Tech is just on the rise. It's been on the rise for ever since, the first computer was created, or computers were made publicly accessible. And with the internet, we all know tech is where it's at, and it's not going away anytime soon. It's forecasted that in future years there's a deficit that's going to exponentially grow of programmers and developers in the world. And this is already being seen. There are so many tech jobs out there. Once you get these skills, you're going to get a job. It doesn't matter what age you are. If you're dedicated and you're focused on learning these skills, which you just really need to put in some time, any age, you're going to get that position. I believe, that's my firm belief, if you just put in a little bit of time and get yourself a few skills under your belt that you can then go out into the job market with. And we'll discuss all of this. We'll go through all of this in this coming video. So I would like to say any age, guys. Before I became a programmer, I was a scientist. I went to university and studied to be a scientist. I did my master's in science. I worked in that industry for 5 years, and then I decided to change my mind and come over to tech, and it was the best decision I ever made. I'm so happy. Everything is easy breezy. There's jobs. I don't have to worry too much about putting food on the table, or I don't need to worry about that. So it's going to give you a stable life, opportunities for growth, for expansion in your career, lots of new things you can learn. Any age is a good age to learn this skill and get in the door. I truly believe that. Number two, the second thing I used to drive myself bananas about before I started to code and just started to get into it. What computer should I use? Oh, I'm going to have to buy a new high-tech MacBook. I need to wait until I can save up over €1,000 to do that. No, you don't. You really, really don't. The computer I'm using at the moment, I got it secondhand. I am a professional developer. I'm a professional developer. Work did supply me with a laptop, which is fabulous. So I do have my work laptop, which I use for work. So that's brilliant. But my own personal computer that I'm doing these videos on, that I've coded on, that I'm doing everything on, I bought it on a second-hand website because I had just moved back from my first job in computer science, yes, and that's when I bought this computer. So the money was low. It was my first wage, very low. I was working abroad and renting, and then I moved home, and there was an expense for relocating and all of that. So the computer I bought was secondhand. I bought it online on a website called adverts.ie, which is the Irish equivalent of buy and sell, or any second-hand website, Facebook Marketplace that you might have in your local area. So I got it there, and I got it for a couple of €100. So this is what I'm still coding on to this day. It's a decent computer, so it has enough capabilities there, but even honestly on a lightweight computer you can start this. So I honestly think any computer you can start. It doesn't matter whether it's a Mac, it doesn't matter whether it's Linux, it doesn't matter whether it's Windows, and it doesn't really matter the specifications. You can get yourself off the ground with any basic computer. I'd even go as far to say, as if you don't have a computer and you don't have a laptop or the means or the funds to get one right now, you can start your coding journey on your phone. There are many applications that you can download for free on the App Store or on the iOS Store. Obviously, getting a computer and getting starting with the coding and learning the basics and tutorials is preferable. But if you don't have the funds right now to be able to do that, don't think this isn't a skill that you can still learn, because there is up to a certain point, you can still learn some of the basic skills and knowledge that's going to help you when you get your laptop on a mobile. So you can be reading up on, I'd say the official documentation might be a step too far, but you could watch YouTube videos, and you can get apps on your phone where you can answer coding questions and you can learn the fundamentals of coding, which will still help you when you get that laptop. I would recommend getting the laptop, but this is just for people that don't have that capability right now. You can definitely still get started, and by putting in that time and starting to create the habit and learning the fundamentals and learning some of how an array works, how an integer is declared, a lot of these basic things you can learn through an application. So I highly recommend just getting started and getting in there, and don't put too much pressure on, I must need a great laptop to start coding, because you don't. And my laptop is still a second-hand couple of €100 laptop that, you know, has pretty basic capabilities. So don't let that hold you back. The third point I'd like to make that I wish I knew was that any language is a good language to start learning. I thought about it for 6 months. Should I learn JavaScript? Should I learn HTML? Should I learn CSS? Should I learn Python? Should I learn Java? My advice is, getting started is the best thing you can do. Don't put too much pressure on what language to learn. They all interplay with each other. They all have basic building blocks that build on each other, and just learning any of them is going to be the best thing you can do. So don't spend 6 months thinking about this question like I did, maybe even 8 months, a year. I did so much research into all these things. And really, once you start, you'll find your way, you'll find your feet. Maybe you might start a particular language, and then once you have the basics of it and you know how to declare your variables, and you know how basic data loops and data structures work, and you know how to interact with them and use them, then when you pick up a second language, say if you started with C++ and then you started to use JavaScript, and you started to get the basics down there, there will be similarities, things will interplay, and then you might think, do you know what, I think I prefer JavaScript. So just by getting in and getting involved and starting to learn a programming language, you're learning the skills that you actually need to code. Whereas if you're just hypothesizing and thinking about it, you're not learning anything. You're not getting any step further. You think you are because you're mulling over this situation for so long and you're thinking about it and you're doing the research, which is helpful, and it does help you make that step. But I'd put a time limit on that. I'd honestly say, if you want to learn coding, which I think, as I said, for step 1, everybody can and should. It's such a valuable skill. There's no age, no skill set. Everybody can do this with focus and dedication. And, you know, working a full-time job, I managed to do this. So you don't need all the time in the world. You just need a bit of dedication and to stick with it. That's the only skill that you really need to do. So by just setting yourself a time frame and saying, okay, in a month I'm going to start any language, And just the first one that calls to you. If you've been looking at Java and you're sort of thinking, oh, should I learn Java? Well, then start a small Java course, a basic introduction to Java, and just get going with it. Basic fundamentals, starting from scratch, starting from the beginning. Maybe Google terms like that. So I would say just get started on any language. The languages I started to learn were HTML and CSS, and I highly recommend these to anybody who doesn't know where to start or how to start, because they're the basic building blocks of web development, of software development, becoming a software engineer. You're going to come across HTML and CSS being a software engineer, so I think, or a web developer. So I believe just get in there and learn any of the languages that call to you, that you've been researching. And if you don't know which ones to start with HTML. There you go. Make it simple. Start it today. If this is something you've been thinking about, just get going. It doesn't matter. Please do like and subscribe if you like this content. Number 4. If you can, guys, get a buddy. Get involved in the community. Get somebody who you can talk to. Is there somebody in your circle who might want to do this as well? Is there somebody that you know that's already doing it, that you can just even talk to them once a week and just say, oh, hi, like I have this small question, or just for that interplay. I didn't have that, so it's certainly not necessary, but I know it would have helped me on my journey. And now I'm further along and I've sort of been learning it. It's hard in the beginning to have a buddy, it's new to you. Maybe you don't know anybody that's coding, but if you do, most coders will. Well, I know I would be extremely happy to help anybody who wants to have a conversation and discuss coding. So don't be afraid to just reach out even once a month, just to keep that traction going, to have somebody that you can ask questions to and stay motivated because you have someone there that knows something similar or that's on the same path as you. A great tip I would recommend is start the 100 Days of Coding Challenge, guys. If you've been following my channel and following my videos, you'll know I just finished the 100 Days of Coding Challenge. And I will say, with the YouTube on top of it, I did it all on YouTube. I uploaded the hour of coding to YouTube every day. With that additional factor, it was a huge undertaking. So I do think that an hour a day, it is a big commitment. So even a half an hour a day, guys, even if you can do a half an hour a day, even a month of coding, make up your own thing and just a month of coding. Maybe that challenge already exists and you can sign up for 28 days of coding. Research it, have a look into it. I'll include links down below if I see something similar like that. But by holding yourself accountable in some way and either getting involved in a community online, like Twitter, where you tweet, 100 days of code, or maybe there's a 28 days of code, which I'm sure there probably is now. It just really helps to keep you engaged and keep you motivated and keep you inspired to want to learn. So that's why I would say get a buddy when and if you can. And if you can't, don't worry about it. I never had one. You don't need anybody else to do this. It's an individual thing, but always with a pack sometimes, just for that motivation, so you can support them and so they can support you and so you can learn from each other. I would have learned and grown a lot quicker as a developer had I have really considered this earlier on in the process. So just from my own learning, I recommend it. Number 5 goes hand in hand with number 4, and that is attend meetups. From about the first year in, I started to go on to meetup.com, which is an online website where you can find meetups from knitting, drinking, eating, walking, entrepreneurship, hitting your goals, whatever your interests, coding, forex, stocks. The list is endless. It's just an online website. I'll include a link in the description box down below so that you can have a look into this yourself. But I highly recommend that you go to any meetups in your local area or online about CSS, about HTML, about programming in general, and just speak to other programmers. I remember I went to a good few when I was in my first role in Malta, and this is going to tie in with the next number here. Forget about imposter syndrome. So I'll pull it in now and I'll speak about both of them. So when I lived in Malta and I was going to meetups in my first year, I felt so intimidated at these meetups. Like, I went to a React meetup or an Angular meetup. Sorry, I was learning Angular at that time, the Angular framework. And all of the guys there and girls were just so much more advanced than me. And they were like, oh, in work today I had to, create a new component, and I added routing, and everything ran so smoothly. And I was just standing there like, I had literally just known what a framework was, what Angular was. I was still on the HTML and CSS and the JavaScript basics. HTML and CSS I understood, the JavaScript I was still learning. So I was a bit lost, but in saying that, it was still great to be there, to hear the terminology, to build up my confidence, to get excited about coding. It did really get me excited about coding, and hearing these people talking and inspired me, even though it was also intimidating. So moving on to number 6, do not let yourself be intimidated. Forget about imposter syndrome and just realize that you're doing yourself the favor of a lifetime that's going to give you a successful job, if that's the route that you want to pursue and you're focused to do that, or a great hobby that you can build your own websites with, which, by the way, takes longer than you might anticipate. I've been building websites and really it takes 6 months maybe. You can build something simple in a month, but if you want to build a full e-commerce store, it's going to take a while. I just want to give you that little nugget of reality, so that when you get started and you haven't built a website in 2 weeks, you're not totally deflated because you still don't have a website. It's totally normal. It takes time. In all the jobs I've ever been on, I've seen like a couple of websites be deployed. So even in professional companies, they're not getting them out in 2 weeks or overnight. They take time to build, and depending on the complexity, they can take a year or longer to build. So just so you know that, guys, I just want to be realistic with you. I don't want you to be deflated if you don't have your website up and running and your new idea, business idea out there in 2 weeks. Anything worth chasing takes time. Sorry for the segue, bit of encouragement, but don't let imposter syndrome take you down. When I was first starting, I really did sometimes feel like, oh, I'm so not good enough. How do I have a job? They don't know I'm crap. They don't know, I just don't know anything. It's so hard to start having that confidence and faith in yourself when you're learning something totally new, and that, there is a whole load of learning around it. You're never going to know everything in coding. But by taking small incremental steps, take stock. Write down your little goals, not little, your large goals. So whatever it might be, break down the bigger aspiration or dream. Say if you want to learn HTML, maybe you could start with Free Code Camp, and you could tick off that you want to do 5 lessons a week, which isn't too huge of a commitment. And then by ticking that off and saying, okay, I did that, I'm making progress. Take stock of all of the progress you make. Celebrate your small and large wins, guys, please. And celebrate yourself, because it's very easy to fall into the trap when you're learning code, or imposter syndrome is thrown around a lot this term. And I can say that I did suffer with it, and that I still do, and only more in the 4th year of learning to code and being a coder. I'm a programmer, I am employed as a successful programmer, and still sometimes I think, so have faith in yourself. You're doing the work, you're learning a skill. Take stock and celebrate your wins. Okay, guys? Love yourself, be kind to yourself, encourage yourself. If you don't encourage yourself, who will. You can do it, for sure. You've got my support. I'm right behind you guys. Let's do this together. Next, get your terms down. So this is something that I found in coding. All of the terminology that is flying around is cray. People are using what are they called? Like shortened abbreviations. The word escaped me for a second. People are using abbreviations for everything. So whether you're in a job or you're watching a tutorial or you're learning about coding anywhere, abbreviations are all over the place. And I'm going to get back to my A to Z of coding full list of abbreviations, terms and phrases that you need to know in coding, and I'll go through the alphabet and name A, B, C, different words. I've already got to G. You can check out those videos, they're already there, of different terms and phrases that you need to know in coding and explanations around what they mean as well. So as you go through your coding journey, as you come across these phrases and terms, take note of them. That would be my advice, because they're going to keep on coming back up again, and especially in a job. In each job you go into, they have their own set of terms and technologies, you know, so just take note of them, write them down, and keep a separate notepad or an online resource. Evernote is fantastic for taking notes. So take note of these things, because you're going to need to come back to them again and again and again. This ties in well with point number 8, and a great way of taking notes if you're a coder, and something I wish I had have known, is to use GitHub. GitHub is fantastic. That's a great little project for anybody who wants to learn how to use GitHub, which is an essential skill for programmers. We use it all the time. It's a versioning software tool for your code. So in university, for example, when you're writing an essay, and you might write your essay and save it as V1, version 1, and then you might write the second draft and save it as V2 or V3. GitHub is a way of doing this very efficiently for code, and also when you're working on a large team, how multiple people can use the same document or code base, make their edits, and push it all up to this central place, so that everybody can work on one large website or project, or a small website or project, efficiently, and for their code to be managed as they put it all in together, basically in a very efficient way. So you're going to come across GitHub in your coding journey as you get further down the line. So I also have a video on that, so you can check that out, and just how to set up GitHub. And I should do another video on how to use it and how to put it all together, and how to actually commit your code. In the 100 Days Coding Challenge, I was committing and saving my code all over the place. So adding your code, writing a commit message, and pushing your code up to GitHub. You save it online and it's version controlled. So GitHub is another great way of taking notes. So for example, for point 6 there, where I said get your terms down, these terms are going to keep on coming up again. You're going to need to know them. So GitHub is a great place for perhaps storing these different terms. You're always going to use GitHub as a programmer, and by being able to refer back to your common terms and terminology and abbreviations in one central place in your GitHub repository, which you can access from any computer because it's saved online, you're winning. You know, you're learning 2 skills in one then. So that's something I wish I had have known, and I would have kept track of. And just on that, don't overdo your notes, okay? The best practice that you can possibly have is coding, and just getting stuck into the coding. So take minimal notes. I think abbreviations, that's great. That's really good to be taking notes on abbreviations that you might see coming up 2 or 3 times, because if you've seen them 2 or 3 times, they're going to keep on coming up again and again. But you don't need to be taking notes on everything. The better practice is just get in and learn. So maybe note your abbreviations, and don't go taking notes on, if you're watching a video, a course, oh, they said this and they said that. You don't need to go to that level of detail. Do not overdo it. Just code. would be my advice. Coding is a skill you need to learn, and by just practicing it, you'll get better and better and better. And if you're a brand new starter, Free Code Camp is a great resource. Check it out. It's how I first learned how to code. Shing! So number 9, what I wish I knew before starting coding. Don't worry about the job titles. In the beginning, I was going back and forth. Do I want to be a front-end developer? Do I want to be a full-stack developer? Do I want to be a back-end developer? And the truth is, I didn't even really fully understand what those terms meant. Because if I did, I wouldn't have been asking myself, do I want to be a full-stack developer starting off? You need to learn both front and back end to become a full stack developer. But Android, iOS, don't worry about any of that, guys. Just pick a language and start coding and learning. And you'll naturally fall into the role that's going to present itself. And there's progression opportunities in every single coding role. So I was there picking it based off salary in the beginning. Oh, well, I should be this type of a programmer because they seem to make the best salary. And to be honest, I think it was empty exercise, because I just went down the route of learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I have a good job, and that's opened doors for me. Just the languages I've selected, and the frameworks that I've built on. But I believe any language and any frameworks will open a set of doors for you. So don't spend your time thinking about this for too long. Just get in and start learning any language that appeals to you. And the 10th and most important point for today's video of things I wish I knew before I started to code is that you are capable of doing this. You are totally capable. If I can do it, you can do it. It's a skill like any other skill, guys, that just needs to be learned with time and repetition. It's like riding a bike. So you are more than capable. You can do this, I promise you. You know, just like in every industry, you meet some people and you go, that guy's a coder. How did he do it? So, you know, I'm just saying anybody can do this. Anybody can do this. And you just need a bit of patience and to put in a bit of work. And I learned the skills how to be a programmer while I still had a full-time job. So you can do it if you have a full-time job. An hour a day will get you pretty far. It'll get you really far. So, you know, if it's something you really want to do and you'd love a career change and you're interested in it, or you'd love to learn your own websites or create your own websites, just start doing it. And I promise you, it's a skill worth learning and you are capable. You can never know everything. You can't know everything that there is to know in coding. It's constantly evolving and changing. So just get in and start learning something that appeals to you, and I promise you it will be worth it. So thank you so much, guys, for joining me, Lilly Code, on another episode of 100 Days of Code. That was the wrong outro. Thank you so much. I'm so used to saying that, guys, now. Sorry. Thank you so much for joining me on Top 10 Things I Wish I Knew Before I Started Developing, Programming, Software Development. They're all the same thing. Don't worry about the terminology. The roles, but do get your abbreviations listed just so you can refer back to them. But thank you so much for joining me on the top 10 things I wish I knew before I started programming. And guys, just start learning it. It's a great skill, and yes, you are capable. Please do like and subscribe if you like this content. Love you all, guys. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode. Peace, amigos. Hey, peace.